Good evening, Pittsburgh Steelers. First of all, let me testing 1, 2, 3. All right, just wanted to check, make sure I was unmuted, unlike last week for the first 2 minutes. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host Tony Defio. Thank you as always for joining me. Thank you for joining me in the live chat. I'll get to you guys in a second. Before I get started, as always, I wanted to encourage you to please like our YouTube channel, Behind the Steel Curtain. We bring you so many podcasts. I name every week. I'm not going to the preview, the Hangover, the Scobro Show, the Curtain Call, Touchdown Under. You name it, we have it. Please check that out on YouTube and Facebook. By the way, you can follow this show live and those other shows, and you can also catch this show and all those other shows I just mentioned on any audio platform after the fact. You have to download those, but you can find them anywhere you can find podcasts. And we also have exclusive only audio shows, such as the Live Mic with Michael Beck, the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield, the Retro Show with yours truly and Brian Anthony Davis, Let's Ride, the very popular show with Jeff Hartman. Am I missing anybody? I think I threw the Curtain Call in there already with, I think, Matty Peverall or Mark Davidson. Anyway, they're both cool. So please check all those out. Check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you news. We bring you film breakdown. We bring you draft coverage. We bring you commentary. And speaking of draft coverage, speaking of podcasts, just wait until next week. We are going to have so much content for you in written form and podcasting form. Just it's going to be covered. Brian Anthony Davis, the podcasting manager, he's kicking butt. Jeff, Dave, Michael, Jeffrey, Kevin, Shannon, the Aussies. Did I miss anybody? You guys, we're all kicking butt. We're all just so can I say drunk off the draft? We are. We're just it's going to be less than a week away, and we're everybody's just so excited. And before I forget, on Mark Davidson, I had a great conversation with Marky D on Monday after the mock draft, at a contributors mock draft, and that's a great segue into the live chat mock draft on the Hangover on Monday. This coming Monday, it's going to be live. You guys who are in it, you all know your draft order. We're all excited. It was our second annual. It's going to be great. As you know, can't draft a punter for the Jaguars. It's got to be Trevor Lawrence. But other than that, you're all the GMs for those teams. It's going to be great, and we're all looking forward to it. And I can't wait for Monday, but I especially can't wait for next Thursday. Next Friday, this show won't be here. We'll be talking about Steelers' second round pick, and then the third round pick after that, and then we'll be talking about the first round pick. We'll have a whole day to digest that by the time next Friday gets here. So we're gonna have plenty of draft coverage, and I just want to welcome everybody to live chat. There's my man T Money, Terry, Manny Mendoza, Mark Davidson. I said hi already. Steelers Pittsburgh, Lumberzack. And Lumberzack says, Tony, you got to say touchdown under like an Aussie, as bad as it is. It may be. It can't be worse than bad. Well, bad has that patent. Brian has that patent. I can't say. I'm not allowed. I would have to pay him royalty, so I can't do that. I'll let him do that. He'll do that on the next time he's on. Shad Landsman, Kathy Forrid, you guys are awesome for joining me. Did I miss anybody? Bert Tavares, he says aloha from Maui. And you know what? After this show, I'm going to watch Hawaii 5-0, because you know why? I'm Generation X, and I'm a Taurus, and I'm a creature of habit, and I'm getting old, so I have to watch Hawaii 5-0 on Paramount Plus, if I can plug that. It's a great streaming channel. Matt Stuffco, Dave Shipley, Joel Anderson. Man, you guys, Patricia, you guys are awesome. So as always, I have some a variety of topics I wanted to hit on tonight, starting with the draft, of course, draft talk. We have to dive right into that. And as the title of the show suggests, I find it impossible for the Steelers to be able to have to reach this year for a pick at 24 for a position of need. And people, I think people are always a little afraid of that they're gonna reach, if they're concentrating on a specific position, like in past years, it was cornerback or inside linebacker going into the draft or whatever position. There were usually one or two positions that they needed to address, and they may have had to reach for a player. This year, I mean, I guess it's great for the draft. I don't know if it's so great for the team. I don't know if it's so great globally, as Mike Tomlin would say, but there's so many positions of need. And, you know, the way, like, I'm looking at these team needs, and I've been doing my own mock draft, like not simulate a mock draft, but I actually went and tried to do a mock draft. And you know, it just seemed like every time I got to 24 for the Steelers, like there were always players there. You know, like when I was trying to figure out what I would do, you know, Brian gave us homework last week before the contributors mock draft, and I was like, what can I, you know, like I was trying to figure out who would be there, and I did these scenarios, right? And like there were like 5 or 6 players that were available by the time Pittsburgh was on the clock at 24, and it's like they were all positions of need. None of them were a reach, unless, you know, you're talking about Creed Humphrey, which I know a lot of people feel that's a need, but we have to be honest. He's in the mix. He's in the mix as far as a center. If they're going center in the first round, it's going to be him, and that's certainly a position of need. Some might say the top position of need. So, but anyway, I was, you know, there was a cornerback or two there. There were obviously plenty of tackles. There were the inside linebackers that we all know, Zem and Collins. There were obviously the center, running backs. You know, there were running backs available, and I think that's how it's gonna play out this year. Because I think you know, you're gonna have Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence. You're gonna have Zach Wilson. You're gonna have Justin Fields. You're gonna have Trey Lance, and who am I missing? Gosh, I'm probably missing a big one. I don't even realize it. Did I say Justin Fields? Got Mac Jones. There are going to be 5 quarterbacks taken by the first 20 picks, I'm guessing. So that's going to, you know, bump so many other positions down, and there's probably going to be great value at least a couple positions when the Steelers are on the clock, maybe even 3. You know, I'm assuming there are going to be plenty of first round graded tackles there. There's probably going to be one of the 3 running backs, if not 2. You know, cornerback. There looks like there might be some cornerbacks available, and they certainly might be in the market for one of those. You know, the inside linebacker Collins is likely going to be there. So I mean, they're not going to have to reach this year like they've done in the past. I think we can all agree. You know, I was a big Artie Burns fan. I love the guy, but Artie Burns was a reach, not a major reach. You know, I'm talking about 2016 and 2016 NFL draft, if I may give it some context. They went into that draft, I think the biggest need on the board, as it was for many years in that era, the mid 2010s, was cornerback. They had a whale of a time trying to rebuild the secondary in that era. And I think they went into that draft. They had the 25th pick in 2016. They went into that draft. I think they assumed that William Jackson III from Houston would be there for them, because I think, you know, there was a run on corners in the year before, a couple of the drafts before 2016, and the Bengals had just taken Darqueze Dennard 2 years from Michigan State 2 years earlier, and they were drafting just in front of Pittsburgh. So it just didn't seem like anybody was going to take Jackson until the 25th pick, and they would have a chance to get him. And I think he was their guy. I think he was their number 1 guy that year, you know, where they were drafting, of course, like at their position of draft. I'm sure if they could have moved up and taken a Jalen Ramsey, was he that year? They may have done so. But when the Bengals shocked everybody and picked Jackson with the 24th selection, I think they panicked. And, you know, to be fair to Artie Burns, I don't think he was a major reach on paper, because I remember like kind of half kidding, maybe it's Artie Burns that they're going to pick from Miami. And you saw him mocked at the end of the first round in many mock drafts. He was kind of in the 30s and the 40s as far as like the big board, you know, depending on what big board you looked at back then. So it wasn't a huge reach. I think a lot of people, like, they look back on it and go, oh my gosh, that was such a big reach, but it really wasn't. But schematically, what they were looking for, and I poo-pooed it at the time. What do I know? I'm not a football expert, but they ran more zone than any team in the NFL, more zone coverage than any team in the NFL at that point. And he was a cover guy. He was a man-to-man cover guy. That was his strength, and he was coming into a system that was going to work against his strength. And I think they were planning on going more man-to-man, but they certainly weren't doing that right away. And, over the course of his first couple of years, he really struggled in zone coverage. I mean, he got lost, or he lost his receivers they got loose behind him in so many occasions. I remember that Kansas City game in 2017. I think it was Tyreek Hill or somebody. He was sitting in the zone, and Hill was wide open behind him, and he had no idea. So, it was a bad fit. It didn't work. It was a reach, but it wasn't a major reach, but it certainly wasn't a great fit. And, I think, if they could have done it, they probably had in my opinion, they had no thought that they would have to, that they would miss out on William Jackson III. I think they assumed he would be there, and I think they panicked a little bit. So that's one occasion where they went into the draft, honed in on one position, and they were assuming that somebody would be there, and he wasn't there, and they didn't know what to do. And then if you fast forward a couple of years, they went into the 2018 draft. They were looking for an inside linebacker. If you remember, that was unfortunately the offseason after Ryan Shazier sustained that horrific back injury, that what turned out to be a career-ending spinal injury against the Bengals in December. And, he was the key to their defense back then, Shazier, and they were looking for another inside linebacker in the middle of that defense. And hold that thought. Basically me, not you, because I'm the one thinking. I have to keep track. Dave Shipley is asking a $5 super chat question, and I screwed that up as always. And thank you for the donation, Dave. And he asks, how does the Ravens trade with Kansas City bleep up the draft? And what he means by that, I don't know if you saw this today, and I wrote it down because I have trouble with these draft trades, confused the heck out of me. On Friday, the Ravens traded Orlando Brown Jr. to the Chiefs in exchange for the Ravens, the Chiefs' 31st pick in the first round, in addition to the 3rd and 4th round pick for this year, and the 5th round for 2022. And the Chiefs get obviously Brown, and they get a 2nd in 2021 and a 6th round pick in 2022. And Dave's asking, how does that bleep up the draft? I don't know how much it messes it up, unless the Ravens try to package the 27th and the 31st pick and move up to get somebody that maybe the Steelers are targeting. I'm looking at their needs. I wrote these all down prior to last week's mock draft. And the Ravens, their needs, at least according to the site I read, which is Bleacher Report, edge, right tackle, and tight end. Now, Orlando Bloom, he's an actor. Orlando Brown wanted to play left tackle, but the Ravens already have a left tackle, and they have him under contract, and he wanted to be like his dad. So I guess it was never going to work there. So he's going to try to be a left tackle in Kansas City, and they can certainly use that. So on my sheet of Ravens needs, it says edge, right tackle, tight end. So how it could bleep up the draft. If the Ravens stay put at 27 and don't try to move up past the Steelers, I don't see them taking any tackle that Pittsburgh might have its eye on. So I don't think they would mess it up that way. I mean, maybe they land a couple of great picks that Pittsburgh might be looking for in the second round. Maybe they land one of those with that 31st selection. Maybe they land the tight end from Penn State. Maybe they land an edge that Pittsburgh might have its eye on. I don't know. Maybe there's an extra receiver in there that they love drafting receivers in the second round, meaning Pittsburgh. I don't know how it could really mess it up unless Baltimore moves ahead of Pittsburgh. It might screw up their second round pick a little bit. I don't know. But, the Chiefs were in the market for a tackle at 31 before they made this trade today. So if the Ravens are if they get their receiver at 27, for example, because that's one of their needs, receiver. If they get their receiver at 27 and their tackle at 31, well, that's pretty much how it was going to go anyway. It would just have been the Chiefs drafting a tackle at 31. So I don't think it's going to screw things up again, unless the Ravens move up ahead of Pittsburgh somehow. So, and where was I? I forget. Oh, yes. Terrell Edmonds, the 2018 draft. And by the way, thanks again for the donation, Dave. The 2018 draft, and that was a draft that the Steelers, I think that they went in there looking for the replacement for Ryan Shazier, and there were three surefire first-round prospects at inside linebacker. Tremaine Edmonds, Terrell Edmonds' brother from Virginia Tech. Leighton Vander Esch from Boise State, I want to say. Forgive me. And Rashaan Evans from Alabama. They were the three main prospects. Edmonds was obviously the clear-cut number one. Vander Esch, his stock rose throughout the draft process. And I think there was a lot of hope that Evans might fall to Pittsburgh. I think they were drafting, 28th, 24th, 20, whatever it was. 28th. Yeah, 28th. And they were all three wound up going. They were long gone. I think Evans was drafted 22nd, right, by the Ravens, I think. Either way, they were gone. All three were gone. And I think Pittsburgh, they had to look for an alternative, and that was Terrell Edmonds. And not as a linebacker, but as an all-everything sort of nickel linebacker, dime linebacker, that kind of thing, hybrid. Somebody who was a great athlete in the middle of that defense, who could maybe pick up the slack eventually. And that was left. That was left after Shazier's injury, and I think he was clearly a reach because he wasn't supposed to go in the first round, meaning Edmonds. So I think they definitely reached for him. But obviously over his 3-year career, he's clearly not a bust. I mean, Artie Burns was a bust. There's no doubt about that. But Edmonds, he was a reach. He was a reach, there's no question, but he is not. He has not. You can't categorize him as a bust. He's really turning himself into a solid player, a solid, strong safety, and whatever else they ask of him in the middle of that defense, covering tight ends. He's really adept at that. Minkah Fitzpatrick certainly helps as a free safety. He makes a lot of people better, like Troy did at one time, Troy Polamalu. So, but he was definitely a reach, but I don't see that happening this year with the Steelers because they just have so many perceived needs, and when their turn comes up on the clock at 24, they're going to have their pick of several players, probably from multiple positions. So we don't have to worry about that this year. So that was my first topic, and again, thank you for the questions. Joseph Wilson says trade back. That's just not. I don't think I've ever seen them do that. Have they ever done that? They've traded up a few times, quite a number of times, but I've never seen them trade back. I could be wrong. Oh no, they did for Casey Hampton. They traded back for him back in 2001, and maybe they will this year. If you're looking for omens, my cousin Quinn, who just turned 20 on Thursday, the 22nd, he was born. Or his mom went into labor the night of the 2001 draft, and that's when they traded back to Casey Hampton. So maybe that's going to happen again. I don't know. I don't know if it's a good or a bad omen. It all depends on how you look at it. If they can procure an extra second round pick by moving back a few spots in the first round, great. Although I think it's going to be harder now when the Ravens, their division rival, has 2 of those picks, and the Browns have the 26th pick. It's going to be kind of hard for them to move back in the first round, I think, because nobody wants to trade within the division, at least in the first round. So anyway, that was the first topic. And the second topic, which I want to touch on pretty quickly, and this is my prediction for the draft. This is my one surefire prediction that, if I'm right, well, nothing's going to happen. If I'm wrong, nothing's going to happen. Nothing is going to happen other than maybe me talking better. I know, wishful thinking, right? But my prediction is when their time on the clock comes next Friday, and either in the second or the third round, they're going to pick a player that you and I have never heard of. Now, when I say you and I mean the casual draft fan that has been examining, the top 50, 60, 70 names these past few months, or in my case, the past month or so. If you're like a hardcore draft fan, and it's going to be hard to get any of these players past you. You're going to know, you probably know 300 names. You probably know, like you're probably like Prince, who had like thousands of unwritten songs in his head. That's probably how you are with these draft prospects. But like, these are some of the names that it might seem weird with some of them, but some of these names I had or all of these names when they were first drafted back, in previous drafts, I had no idea who they were when Pittsburgh took them. And I'll start with Jason World, second round, 2010. Marcus Gilbert, second round, 2011. Believe it or not, Le'Veon Bell, second round, 2013. No idea. Marcus Wheaton, third round, 2013. No clue. Sean Spence, I skipped over that one. Sean Spence, and I think it was the third round in 2012. Sean Davis, second round, 2016. Juju, believe it or not, I had no idea who he was in 2017. James Washington, no clue. Deontay Johnson, I don't think anybody knew him. I think Dave Schofield might have known him, but nobody else. And, of course, last year, Alex Highsmith, third round out of Charlotte. And I think that happens every year. I think the reason why we're all like caught off guard with these picks, these second-day picks, is because when you look at these names, these 50, 60, 70 names that you examine, so many of them fall into the second and third round. Like these, them, these players, and oftentimes they fit a need that Pittsburgh might have at a certain position, and like you expect when they're there. Like say one of these known people that you have been researching the past couple of months is sitting there at 55. You're like, well, they're going to take it. They're going to take that guy. I know that guy. They're going to take him, and then they wind up taking somebody that maybe you've never heard of. And I think the reason why we get so out of we just get so frustrated with that, and like we're like, what are they doing? Why are they taking that guy? It's because like our draft board is obviously way different than theirs. There's they look at specific players and they visit specific players and they know the how they fit into their schemes and like we might look at the second or the fourth best offensive tackles there. Why they take the fifth best edge in the second round? I don't get that. It's because they just feel they're more comfortable with that player. They feel like that player again fits what they want to do as a team, as a defense or as an offense. So I think that's a lot of that is why we get so because we only take it 60, 70 deep, whereas they're going like 100, 150, 200 deep with evaluating all these players. So that's my one prediction for this coming draft next Friday, when Brian and whoever else his co-hosts are after the second round pick, after the third round pick, they're going to be talking about somebody that like, why'd they pick that guy? Everybody's kind of shocked that they went with that guy. I don't know who that guy is. This other guy was there. I knew that guy. That's my prediction. So be alert. Be on the lookout for that. So on that note, that brings to a close the first half of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, please don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back. If you're listening on an audio platform, I encourage you, I beg you, please, I want you to download part 2, because you know what I'm going to do in part 2? I'm going to tell you what I think of the Mike Tomlin 3-year contract extension. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be controversial. So please, come back in 2-2 or 5-5 or whatever. I'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I am your host, Tony Defio. I thank you for joining me. I just want to welcome some more people into the live chat. We have Russ Obenstein, John C., Simon, Elias, Mark Tobin, Joe, I already got Joe Wilson, Owen David. So thank you all for joining me. And let's see what else we have here. Do I have any hot takes? Did I miss? All right. No. So I'm going to get into my contract. Wow. Mike Tomlin contract extension. That was announced on Tuesday morning. Very matter-of-factly. The Steelers signed him to a 3-year extension through 2024. The financial part of it, who knows? But if you want to know what I think of that pick, I'm going to tell you what I think of that deal, that extension. I'm okay with it. I like it. What did you expect? Of course, I'm okay with it. Of course, I think it's a good decision. It's a polarizing decision. I mean, my goodness, if you saw the internet in the couple of days after the extension was announced, I mean, it was like, wow, you talk about controversy. But I mean, it's like I always say when it comes to the head coach, if you have a good one, you better be sure when you pull the trigger and move on from that person and bring somebody else in. Because like, if you don't have that part of your program down, if you don't have it, if it's not working, if you don't have stability there, it's so hard to build anything. It's so hard to maintain anything. It's so hard to progress. You have to get that right. Just like you have to get the quarterback position right. It's those two things. When you see, if you look at the truly bad organizations out there, the ones that have been struggling for a while, look at their quarterback situation and look at their head coaching situation. Usually it's a turnstile for in both areas. So, I realize there are plenty of reasons that you can come up with to move on from Tomlin. Just like there are plenty of reasons that you can cite for keeping him. It's depending on how you feel about it. If you like Tomlin, then you can come up with a million reasons. If you don't like him, then you're gonna come up with so many reasons to get rid of him, like the whole coaching tree thing, the 3 playoff wins since 2010. The fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl since 2008. I mean, the fact that they've kind of been outplayed in their last 3 playoff losses. I mean, really outplayed badly. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons you can come up with, but to me, when you have stability at that part of your organization, you'd be hard pressed to move on from them. And you can certainly make a lot of you can cite a lot of reasons why that they've struggled since 2010 to get back on top of the championship mountain, and the main reason for me is it's just hard to do. I know it's a simple way of looking at it, and a lot of people don't want to hear it. But when you look at NFL history, you look at the teams that go on that had Super Bowl runs. Just look at any number of them. And when I say a Super Bowl run, I'm talking about one that like that from beginning to end. Not you can't just take one big long Super Bowl run and turn it into 2. I'm talking about like the Patriots. They had like an almost a 20-year Super Bowl run, unprecedented. You can't divide that into 2. That was one long run. So, I'm pretty confident that their next 10, 15 years are going to be fairly lean. Maybe not in terms of making the playoffs, but in terms of, getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it. That's just how it goes. I mean, you look at the Cowboys after their long run from the 60s through the early 80s, they really fell off, and they got back up there again in the 90s. To their credit, they hit rock bottom. They fired Tom Landry, brought in Jimmy Johnson, had a new owner and Jerry Jones. They got back on top again, but then Jerry Jones decided he wanted to be the GM, and they've been struggling to get back there ever since. They haven't even come close to a Super Bowl since 1995. When the Steelers had their success in the 70s, people talk about those, and there are plenty of reasons why teams teams fall off. And a lot of it is luck, a lot of it's timing, but mainly it's because how the league wants it. I mean, the league wants it to be cyclical. And, look at the Steelers of the 70s, that great run that they had. People talk about those drafts from 69 to 74. And, they drafted 9 Hall of Famers. They signed Donnie Shell as an undrafted free agent. He became a 10th Hall of Famer. They talk about it. It's like people love talking about those years and how well they did and how well, Art Jr. did as the chief scout and Bill Nunn, going into the African-American college, the small black colleges in the South and all that great stuff. But nobody talks about 75 through 79, where they barely brought in anybody of substance. They like their first pick in 1975 after they won their first Super Bowl. Dave Brown, is it Dave Brown? Yeah, the safety. They didn't even keep him. They didn't even protect him in the expansion draft the following year. The Seahawks claimed him in the expansion draft, and he went on to have a great career, like a fantastic career, like 50 interceptions or 45 interceptions or something. He was fantastic. You don't think they could have used him in the in the 80s when they were going through the transition, but they couldn't keep him because they were so strong at so many positions, and they had depth. I mean, Donnie Shell was a backup for a number of years behind Mike Wagner, and who was the other safety that they had? But anyway, he was a backup until like the late 70s, Donnie Shell. So, I mean, they had so much depth. It was hard, so like, if they were able to keep a Dave Brown, then maybe things were a little bit different in the 80s, I mean, that's just, the league wants you to kind of fail in the draft by having you draft in not just late in the first round, but late in every round. And that was the Steelers' plight for the second half of the 70s. And by the time the 80s rolled around and those 70s superstars were getting old and they all left or were cut, you were left with a kind of an average team. So that's another reason. The league just does not want somebody to stay on top forever. So that's another reason why it's hard to, when you see what the Steelers did from 2004 through 2010, it's hard to repeat that. And you look at so many teams, they have the same issues that Pittsburgh has had. So, the Packers, I mean, they got lucky. I mean, they hit the lottery by drafting Aaron Rodgers after Brett Favre. But even he hasn't been able to duplicate what Favre did. Yeah, there's one championship, same as Favre, but the Packers went to 2 Super Bowls back-to-back in the 90s, and he won 3 straight MVPs. So it's, even Aaron Rodgers couldn't quite duplicate the same success that Brett Favre did before him. And you look at the Packers, and people talk about Tomlin wasting Ben's last 10 years. They've had back-to-back franchise quarterbacks for 3 decades now, dating back to the early 90s with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. And, they've won a couple Super Bowls, which is pretty good. But, the Packers were the standard bearer in the 60s. And here we are, 61 years or 53 years after their great run in the 60s, and they've won 2 titles since. So it's hard to duplicate championship runs. When you do it once, it's probably going to be a long time before you do it again, at least a decade or so, or probably more than that. That's just the reality of it. Again, I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but it's just the truth. So I'm a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I think he's doing a great job. I think, it's hard to transition from the kind of team that they had, when you have to transition that defense from old, slow, and it's over back to the younger version. It took them almost a decade to get back there, and they had a lot of issues with injuries in the playoffs. I mean, they put everything on the killer bees, right? And how often did Brown, Bell, and Ben play together in the playoffs? Not very often. I mean, you didn't. It was rare that you had the 3 of them together in the playoffs. And the one time that they did, what did they do? They went all the way to the AFC Championship game, and then of course Bell got hurt. Well, he was already hurt, but he aggravated his groin injury in the championship game against the Patriots. And I don't think they would have had a chance anyway. I think the defense was still struggling. And, the Steelers could never stop Brady at Gillette Stadium. So Bell or no Bell, they weren't going to win that game. But, I mean, that was the one time that they had Ben, Bell, and Brown together for the playoffs, and they were one game away from the Super Bowl. So 2014, they didn't have Bell. 2015, they didn't have Bell. And then Brown got hurt in the middle of the playoff run, and Ben was hurt in that Cincinnati game too, in addition to Brown. So there are a lot of reasons you can look to. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but it is what it is. It's the truth. So I'm happy that Tomlin's going to be back for another few years, and we'll see what he can do. I mean, he's going to be here through the probably the final year of Ben's career next year, and then it's going to be, how is he going to do without Ben? A lot of people have been waiting for that. A lot of people have been predicting that he's not going to do so well. He's probably not going to do well if they don't find another great quarterback or another really good quarterback. That's just the reality of life in the NFL for anybody. You look at how the Patriots struggled last year without Tom Brady. So. And I just wanted to. Steelers Pittsburgh says, and Tomlin gets blamed for those injuries. Well, I don't even know if people realize that when they're going off about Tomlin and the 3 playoff losses or the 3 playoff wins over a decade, that they don't even cite those injuries, which are a big deal because people talk about all this talent that he had, but he really didn't have a whole lot of talent in the 2010s. He had an average defense, and again, they hung their hat on 3 All-Pros. Ben, Brown, and Bell. And if it's like the Pirates in the early 90s with Bonilla, Bonds, and Van Slyke. They needed those 3 guys to be productive in the playoffs, and they never were. And they never advanced to the World Series. They lost in the NLCS 3 straight years, much to my chagrin and much to my many tears that I shed in those days. So if you didn't have and they were called the Killer Bees, or not, Van Slyke, but there were a lot of Pirates with B in their name back then, and they were all called the Killer Bees. And the Steelers of the mid 2010s had the same thing, and they couldn't count on those guys to stay healthy for the playoffs. So, but one last thing I wanted to touch on, and here's what I keep going back to the live chat, but you guys are making great. You're putting great content out there. And this is Manny Mendoza, and he says, Tomlin's success has more to do with Ben than anything. Tomlin, great players coach, but he is one of the worst situational coaches in the league. Well, remember a couple years ago when Bud Dupree, that second Cleveland game with Duck Hodges, the one at Heinz Field? What did Bud Dupree say about the adjustments that they made at halftime? He said, Coach T went old school at halftime. He went on the chalkboard, and he went back to high school, and he made adjustments, and he made us a better defense, and he showed us how to attack the Browns. And so I don't know about that at all. And as far as him being a great players coach, people look at Tomlin and think he's not a disciplinarian, and they look at Coach Cowher as like the ultimate disciplinarian. He's got the jaw, the chin, seemed like the spittle and everything, and they assumed he was this disciplinarian. But I mean, don't take my word for it. But Stan Savran, who has been covering the Steelers here since the mid 70s, and he got to know Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin all rather well. And he did coaches shows with all 3 of them. Well, not really Noll, but Noll didn't do stuff like that, but Cowher and Tomlin especially, or certainly. And he said all his years of observing those 2 in action, Bill Cowher was the much bigger players coach than Tomlin is. In fact, word was back then that Bill Cowher was much harder on his assistant coaches than Tomlin is. Maybe that's Tomlin's big fault, that he's too afraid to put the hammer down on his assistants, whereas Cowher was like, his assistants didn't really like him. I mean, there are so many stories of guys who didn't get along with Cowher, but his players all loved him. But of course, Tomlin's players love him too. But I think he's more of a disciplinarian than Cowher was. At least that's what I've heard. And again, that's what Stan Savran said, and he's been around here forever, and he certainly knows more about the situation than I do. But I just want to touch on one more thing. one more thing that's been eating at me all week since Tuesday. And I've noticed this for a while, but it came home to roost again with the Tomlin extension. And it's this idea that like, I really didn't notice this until like the dawn of social media, but it's like, there's always this contingent of fans that like act like other fans, like, who are positive about the team are like suckers and rubes and marks and, that kind of thing. And like, we're being taken advantage of because we're not like up in arms over things like a contract extension, and my thing is like, none of this affects any of us directly. Like, yeah, we get upset when they win or upset when they lose and happy when they win. And, it's fun and we get into it and we follow the draft and go out and buy our paraphernalia and watch the game and debate about it. But at the end of the day, like, they're not like trying to sell us. Like, I'm not like buying beachfront property in Nevada off of Art II. Like, I'm not like, like when people say things like, so you're just going to accept mediocrity, you're going to accept this, you're okay. Like, I have to accept everything. Mediocrity, championships, losing seasons. I have no control. I have no say. I'm not the GM, and it's like you have these people that they act like if they go off the rails all the time, if they're like, making negative memes and like creating online petitions and making signs and going to Heinz Field and, making fun of Tomlin and Rooney and, like they act like that's going to do anything. And they act like that's like they're going to make decisions based on that. And they're not, because they're not emotional like we are. It's okay to like be critical, but like to think that like you're like above it all because like you're not accepting the losing. Well, what does not accepting look like to me? I just want to know what does that look like when you say you're not going to accept it? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're not going to watch anymore? You're not going to go to the games? Is that what you mean? I mean, is that like the condition? Like is that the stipulation? Like you're only going to go again, or you're only going to be a fan if they keep winning championships? So like when people say, I don't accept the losing, well, what does that look like? Does that mean you're like officially done with the team? Does it mean that you're just going to, I just like, you're going to protest? Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Like, like I've been a fan since I was 7 years old. I've been following them for 41 years now. Yeah. Is that the right math? Yeah. 41 years. I mean, I've seen it all. So, I mean, like if as much as I love Tomlin, if they fire him, I'm going to accept the new person and cheer them on. If they go 2-14 over the next 5 years, I'm going to still cheer for them. Does that make me a sucker? I mean, it's a pastime, like it's something I do to pass the time and I get enjoyment out of it. I mean, I sit in my recliner every Sunday and sometimes crack open a beer, sometimes not, watch the game, make funny remarks on Twitter. I mean, that's entertainment to me. I mean, does that make me a rube because they're not winning a championship every year? I mean, I think that's what it all comes down to with people is it's like it all comes down to championships. And when I notice with like a lot of fan bases, pretty much every fan base, probably ever, it's like there's a lot of like angst in between championships. It's like you win a championship and then you have all these years of where you come close or you don't make the playoffs and this one needs to be fired. This one needs to get cut. This one needs to retire, blah, blah, blah. And then they win another one and then things are okay for a while. And then you start the whole process over. I mean, that's kind of what I noticed, which is not a original observation, but that seems like that's what being a sports fan is to so many people. It's like, just so much angst and so much like with the Justin Lane thing, with him getting arrested, like people like they identify with it so closely. It's like they're embarrassed by it. Like they're like Franco Harris said one time back in the early 2010s when they were having some troubles with like Mike Adams and people like that, and James Harrison with the commissioner interview, whatever. And it was like, people come up to me and say they're embarrassed to be, I'm like, why would you be embarrassed by the Steelers? Why would they, it's like, it doesn't reflect you personally. It's just like, it's like, whether you're so angry about it or just like, you're fine with it. It's still, it's like, it's not going to change your life. So like, to me that like Mark Madden says that stuff all the time. Like, oh, you stooge, like you marks, you're just a bunch of marks out there because you like the Steelers or the Pirates or the Penguins. Oh, he doesn't say that about the Penguins. He loves the Penguins. But like this whole idea, like we're being taken for a ride because we happen to like a football team, like they're like conning us or something. I just wanted to get that off my chest, and I'm not gonna say any more about it. So on that note, I'm going to take some more questions as I round out the show and see what else we have here. And here's one. Here's my perfect example. The standard is the standard. The Browns' playoff loss was embarrassing. That's from Bert Tavares. That's just a saying, Bert. And it's a great saying, but it doesn't guarantee anything. The standard is the standard, but if you look at the 55 years that the Super Bowl has been played, the standard for most championships is 6. That's still a really, really low amount in the grand scheme of things. We can still enjoy these years, like these seasons that don't end. And yeah, the loss sucked. Would I call it embarrassing? No, I wasn't embarrassed by it. I went to work the next day. I was fine. It sucked big time. I didn't want to see it. I was like shocked that they were down 28-0, but I wasn't embarrassed by it. And, I'm still a fan. It didn't take me long to get over it. I was fine within a day or so. Not even. When I say fine, it's not like I was like depressed or anything, And here's one from here we go. Like with the Justin Lane thing, Russ Obenstein. Now all of a sudden, people are saying that Lane has been disruptive with his teammates. Who's saying that? I haven't heard that at all. I mean, I heard the everything that happened. It wasn't pretty. He was in Ohio speeding 89 in the 65 zone with a suspended license. There was some, I guess they were smoking. There was like the smell of marijuana, which is not that as nearly as big a deal as it used to be, as far as unless he was high, which by all accounts he wasn't. And of course he improperly stored his gun. They found his gun in the car. I guess it's registered or something, but it wasn't. It was illegal the way he was storing it in his car. I don't know. I mean, like when you add it all together, is it something that should end his career here? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, as far as the speeding goes, and I'm not trying to defend him, but I'm somebody who drives every day. I'm on the road all the time, and I have been basically for 5 years. And let me just say, there are a lot of maniacs out there, and a lot of people doing 85 and 65 in a 65 zone. I see it all the time. So, I mean, I'm not going to condemn him over that. Why he would do that on a suspended license, that's just silly, but whatever. As far as the speeding goes, like I just cracks you up when people talk about when these players are in the news for speeding. I see it every day. I see it on the highway. I see people doing that thing where they're like weaving in and out of traffic, like on the highway, like they do in the police shows where they're being chased by the cops, like not like real police chases, but like the fake ones. That's like I see them doing that. They're such in a hurry. I don't know how many times like I'm like just driving along, not on the highway, but like on like a regular residential road, and I'm just like doing the speed limit or even like 5 miles over, and there's somebody behind me like right like tailgating me, like their headlights are right in my like rear view mirror. I can't even see. Like there's so much aggression out there on the road. So, I mean, you might say, well, he had his whole life ahead of him. He's got this great opportunity in the NFL, and he's going to throw it all away by speeding like a maniac on the highway. Well, what about your dreams? What about your hopes and dreams as you're going 90 down the highway looking at your cell phone? So like, as far as the speeding thing, it's stupid, but I'm not going to like say he should be kicked out of the league for it or like the gun thing. I mean, maybe I don't know. Like, I don't know what, like, it's kind of like the Chase Claypool thing from a month ago. At the time it seemed like a big deal, but then it kind of went away. this is a thing where a player was arrested. So that's kind of obviously a more serious issue, but like, it's not like, like if you want to know the opinion, like my opinion of it, I don't think it's something that should he should be cut over, maybe suspended, maybe fined. But there was an article published on the site on Friday, and every opinion imaginable is on there. So everybody feels differently about it, just like everything else. He should be cut. He shouldn't be cut. He's young and stupid. Well, I was young and stupid once too, and I didn't do that, and blah blah blah. So everybody every opinion's out there about the Justin Lane thing. So I don't know if I can add anything more to it other than you're a hypocrite. You know who you are out there on the highway going nuts and cutting across 3 lanes of traffic without putting your turn signal on. I see you out there every day. So don't try to say like these players are any different than we are. So that's all I'm going to say about Justin Lane. And here's Russ Obenstein, and just to give a context, he said he got pulled over because there was a warrant for him, but it was a warrant for a traffic violation. It's not like it was like a felony or anything. I just want to, again, it's stupid. I don't know why. I mean, we're talking about a professional athlete who gets paid a decent amount, 6 figures at least. Why he's not paying his traffic violations, I don't know. Just irresponsible. But it wasn't like it wasn't like a felony. Like he wasn't wanted for I don't know, name any serious crime. And like people talk about, I saw that on the site today, the mugshot. He was smiling. It looked like it was his driver's license to me. That's what it looked like. Like it had his date of birth right above it. Wasn't it his driver's license, not his mugshot? I don't know. It didn't look like a mugshot to me. I could be wrong. And of course, Steelers Pittsburgh says the comments section after the arrest was made went off the rails, and of course it did. It always does. Everything like that goes off the rails when it's posted. Like that's the kind of thing, and I get it. I mean, it's human nature, but that's what I always find funny about any comment section. People always say, I don't want to talk about that controversial stuff. Why can't we talk about the cover 3 formation or whatever? Ramon Foster retired. Why don't you write a nice article about that? And then you write those kind of things, and nobody cares. But then anytime there's like a hot button topic that's written about, people go nuts over it, and they just they fight and argue all day long. People love to fight online. Don't kid yourself. They do. Let's see what else we have here. A lot of people have some. Here's another one. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on the Justin Lane arrest. So people want to talk about it. So there you go. That's like the main thing being discussed on the in the live chat. As far as what that means, and I'll just bring this back to the draft before I sign off. As far as what it means are they going to draft a cornerback? I mean, they were probably going to draft one anyway. I think we talked about that. First, second, third round, I don't know, but they were talking about drafting a cornerback as it is. I mean, James Pierre is a nice prospect as an undrafted free agent. Justin Lane is a former third-round pick, and I'm thinking, well, maybe he's there's a lot of optimism for him. I don't know, but then I was listening to the radio today, and they were talking about advanced stats. So I did a little research myself. They were talking about the quarterback rating. Excuse me, the quarterback rating on passes targeted to him. And they said 129. But I looked at Pro Football Reference in 2020. The quarterback rating on passes targeted to him, targeted to his receivers that he was covering, was 138.5. So I don't know. I mean, it's a limited sample size. I hate to judge him on maybe a couple dozen plays. I mean, he is a young player, but maybe he's never gonna be their answer at corner. I think obviously they like Cam Sutton as the slot. Maybe they start the season with Cam Sutton on the outside, and then hopefully they can find somebody else to play on the outside while he slides back inside. I saw some people reference Steven Nelson. That might be a bridge that's kind of burnt. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that ugly of a breakup. But this is what kills me about fans is people like maybe his play did. I'm talking about Steven Nelson. Maybe his play did decrease last year, but I mean, it wasn't noticeable. It wasn't like horrific. He's still a starting caliber corner, and people are like, I don't want him anymore. Like, I mean, you can't go from he was like one of the best cover corners in the league, where he kind of slightly declined last year. Now you don't want him. You don't want anything to do with him. Like if they can get him back it would have to be a reduced price, of course. I'm not going to pay him like the $8-9 million they were paying him. If they can get him like $5-6 million just for a 1-year deal, like if the market dried up that fast for him, I wouldn't mind that for 1 year. Steven Nelson. I mean, he's a starting caliber corner. Maybe he did regress last year, but he's still a starting caliber. Like this whole all or nothing thing that people do. He's not Mel Blount. He's not Rob Woodson, but he's still a pretty darn good corner. And if you can get him for like $5 million or $6 million, I mean, I would do it at this point. Like when you got an unknown in St. Pierre, and then you see these stats on Lane, and again, limited action last year. Like, I don't know, and then if you do draft a corner, he's still going to be a rookie. He's going to be a total unknown. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that position now. Maybe it's a much bigger need than we ever realized, even before Justin Lane got arrested. So. Yeah, here's Russ Openstein. And he said, I thought Nelson played good last. Russ is like the star of this show. He said, I thought Nelson played good last year. Mark Tobin says Nelson has been top 5 for the last 2 years. And that's the thing. Like I didn't hear like a whole lot about how like he was like this. He was this horrible player last year until like rumors got out that he wanted traded, or they gave him permission to be traded. That kind of thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of that's a bit revisionist history. I'd welcome him back. I don't know if they want him back, with the whole public, how things went down publicly. But again, it really wasn't that bad. Let's be real. You look back on it 3 or 4 weeks later, it really wasn't that bad. It wasn't like anything close to what Antonio Brown did in 2019 when he burned his bridges on the way out of town. So. Well, I'm getting up against the hour, and I don't like to go over an hour, but I had so much fun talking tonight. I couldn't help myself. But you guys were awesome as always. Thank you for everything. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for all the comments and the questions. And again, don't forget Monday if you're involved in the live chat draft, you got to be there. You know your order. Brian gave you your order. You had the lottery last week, but if you're not involved, please check it out anyway. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be a lot of great debate. I'm really looking forward to it. So please check that out. And until then, you guys have a great weekend. And go Steelers. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much.